The war between humans and the Velnar had burned across many worlds. For years, both sides had fought over territory, trade routes, and resources that each believed were rightfully theirs. The human fleet called this campaign the Frontier Defense, while the Velnar Empire saw it as a crusade to protect their borders. No side was truly innocent. The sky of Thalos Prime, once blue and filled with floating markets and skyships, had turned dark from smoke and fire. Cities that once sang with trade now echoed with the roar of cannons and the cries of the wounded. In the middle of all this stood Ryan, a human field medic. He had been trained not as a fighter but as a healer. His duty was to save anyone who could still breathe regardless of their flag. The ground beneath his boots was covered with ash and metal fragments. His helmet visor flickered from static as he scanned the area for survivors. His squad had been separated hours ago when a Velnar assault ship struck their convoy. Since then, he had been alone, moving through the shattered ruins of what used to be the capital square. Ryan carried a small medpack slung over his shoulder, filled with stimulants, sealants, and portable energy bandages. He had no weapon, only a flare gun for emergencies. The silence around him felt heavier than the smoke. Occasionally, distant explosions rumbled like thunder, but here in the ruins, everything felt still. Every step he took crunched against glass and debris. He found a fallen human soldier under a piece of concrete, tried to lift it, and failed. The soldier had already passed. Ryan bowed his head briefly, whispered a quiet prayer, then moved on. His hands were trembling slightly, not from fear but exhaustion. He had not slept in nearly 30 hours. Then, from behind a broken wall, he heard a sound. It was not the whir of a machine or the wind. It was a faint groan, deep and rough, like someone trying to breathe through pain. Instantly alert, Ryan crouched low and moved closer. His instincts told him it could be a wounded soldier, or it could be an enemy ambush. Still, he had to check. He crept behind the wall and looked inside the shadowed space. There, half buried under a slab of stone, was a tall figure in cracked silver armor. Her armor had a strange curved design, unlike any human gear. The armor shimmered faintly even under the dust, reflecting traces of blue light. A large gash ran across her upper arm, leaking dark purple blood. Ryan realized instantly that she was Velnar. Her long hair, almost metallic in color, had fallen across her face. Even wounded, she looked strong. Her breathing was slow but steady. One hand clutched the hilt of a blade that was too large for a human to wield easily. Ryan hesitated for a moment. His orders said to report all enemy presence, but his conscience told him something else. She was alive and in pain. He could not walk away. He raised both hands to show he meant no harm and spoke in a calm tone. "I am not here to fight. I can help." The alien woman opened her eyes, sharp and silver like the armor she wore. Her voice came out low and hoarse. "Stay back, human." Her blade trembled as she tried to lift it, but she was too weak. The effort only deepened the wound on her arm. Ryan moved a little closer, keeping his voice steady. "If I wanted to harm you, I would not be standing here with no weapon. You are hurt. Let me fix that before you bleed more." For a moment, there was only silence. The woman's breathing grew heavier. Finally, she lowered her blade and said nothing. Ryan took that as permission. He knelt beside her and opened his medpack. The wound was deep and had burned tissue around it. Whatever struck her had been plasma-based, likely from a human rifle. He sprayed a coagulant mist over the cut, then used a sterilizer to clean the area. The alien flinched slightly but did not stop him. He worked quickly, sealing the wound with a thin film that hardened like glass. While he worked, he could feel her gaze on him. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Humans and Velnar rarely met outside battlefields, and never like this. When he was done, he pressed a small healing patch over the wound. "You should be fine now. Try not to move too much until your strength returns." She looked at her arm, then at him. Her voice softened slightly. "Why would you help an enemy?" Ryan wiped his hands and said, "Because you are not my enemy when you are hurt. You are a life that needs saving. That is enough reason." Her eyes lingered on him. It was clear that she was not used to such words. Velnar culture valued strength, not mercy. On her world, weakness was shame. Yet here was a human risking his own safety to save her. Minutes passed in silence. The sound of distant engines grew closer and Ryan tensed. He could not tell if it was a human patrol or a Velnar search unit. The alien woman tried to stand but winced in pain. Without thinking, Ryan supported her with one arm. She was taller than him, her armor heavy and damaged. "There is a bunker under that archway," he said, pointing toward a half-collapsed entrance nearby. "We can hide there until it's safe." She nodded faintly, and together they moved. Each step left marks of ash behind them. The bunker door was jammed, but Rian managed to force it open just enough to slip inside. The air inside was cold and smelled of rust, but it offered shelter. He helped her sit against the wall, then checked her pulse. It was stronger now. He offered her his water container. She hesitated, but finally took a sip. "I am Kara," she said quietly, "warrior of the Velnar Royal Guard." Ryan nodded. Ryan, human medic. For a long while, neither spoke. The war outside seemed distant here. Inside the small bunker, they were just two survivors. Ryan used a light from his wristband to check her vitals again. The healing patch was holding well. He sighed with relief. Kara watched him work and finally asked, "Do all humans act this way?" Ryan smiled faintly. "No, some would have left. Some would have done worse. I was taught to save lives, not decide which lives are worth saving." Her gaze softened, though she tried to hide it. She studied his uniform, the dirt on his hands and the tiredness in his eyes. He looked nothing like the ruthless invaders her people had described. After some time, Kyra leaned back and said, "You are brave, human." "Foolish, but brave." Ryan laughed quietly. "My friends would agree with that." A soft rumble echoed above them as the building shifted under bombardment. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ryan shielded Kara instinctively, pressing her against the wall until the shaking stopped. When silence returned, she looked at him, almost puzzled. "You protect even me," she said. "You truly have no fear." Ryan shook his head. "Of course I have fear, but I cannot let it decide what I do." Kara stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly, as if understanding something new. Hours passed. Ryan checked the radio but found only static. His unit might have withdrawn already. The night outside was quiet now, filled only with distant thunder and faint flashes of light. He gave Kara a ration bar, which she accepted after hesitation. As they ate, Kara spoke again. "You humans fight fiercely. I have seen it many times. But I have not seen one who fights to save," Ryan replied. "Maybe we both fight too much to understand each other." Kara gave a short, tired smile. "Maybe." Her strength was slowly returning. She looked down at her arm where the wound had been. The pain was almost gone. She could move her hand freely again. She turned to him and said quietly, "When this battle ends, I will remember what you did, Rian." He nodded. "I would like that." Outside, the storm continued, painting flashes of blue across the cracks in the bunker wall. Inside, for the first time in many hours, Ryan felt calm. He did not know who Kara truly was or what her position meant. He only knew he had done what he believed was right. Far above them, among the clouds, Velnar ships searched for their missing commander. They had no idea that their queen, disguised as a warrior, was sitting in a ruined bunker beside the human who had just saved her life. The first light of dawn slipped through the cracks in the broken bunker wall. Dust floated gently in the air as the sound of distant engines rumbled across the horizon. Ryan opened his eyes slowly, feeling stiffness in his back from the hard floor. He had spent the night half awake, listening to every noise outside. The air was cold, carrying the metallic smell of burned machines and soil. Across the room, Kara was already awake. She sat quietly, leaning against the wall, her armor partly removed so her wound could breathe. The healing patch had done its work. The mark on her arm was no longer bleeding, only a faint scar left behind. She turned her arm slowly, testing her strength. The look in her eyes showed surprise. Rian noticed and smiled faintly. "Better?" he asked. Kara nodded. "Better. Your medicine works fast. It is a standard issue healing compound. We use it for plasma burns," Ryan explained. "It closes the wound and helps the tissue grow faster." Kara studied the small vial of blue liquid in his med pack. "Strange. We have something similar, but not this quick." Ryan shrugged. "Maybe one day our scientists can compare notes instead of fighting wars." She gave a small smile, almost hidden behind her calm expression. It was the first time she had smiled since he met her. Ryan felt a faint warmth in his chest. For a moment, it did not feel like they were enemies from two different worlds. He stood and moved to the bunker entrance, peeking outside. The street was quiet. Black smoke still rose from the distance, and he could see the remains of vehicles scattered across the cracked road. "Looks clear," he said. "We should move before either side finds us." Kara slowly got to her feet. Though her strength had returned, she was still weak. She adjusted the pieces of her armor, wincing slightly as she tightened the straps. "Where will you go?" she asked. "North side of the city," Ryan replied. "My unit had an extraction point there. If the signal tower is still standing, they might send a pickup ship." Kara folded her arms. "That is near the old command outpost. My people will also be searching there. If we go together, you risk being captured." Ryan glanced at her and said calmly, "Then I risk it. I am not leaving you alone until I know you can walk safely." She looked at him for a long moment as if measuring his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Her soldiers always obeyed, her advisors always agreed, but this human simply said what he thought. They stepped out into the ruined street. The sun hung low, lighting the destruction in shades of red and gold. Buildings were nothing more than hollow shells, their walls torn apart by explosions. The air was heavy with heat and the scent of burned stone. As they walked, the silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was cautious, like two strangers learning to trust. Ryan kept scanning the road with his visor, checking for movement. "You were part of the Royal Guard, right?" he asked after a while. "Why were you out here alone?" Kara hesitated before answering. "It was supposed to be a secret mission. I was leading a small squad to negotiate with one of our rebel groups. They wanted independence from the Velnar crown. We hoped to stop another civil war." Ryan frowned. "Negotiation during a human invasion?" She nodded. "The rebellion started long before your kind arrived. The invasion only made things worse. My ship was shot down before we reached the rebels' base." Ryan nodded slowly. He could see the pain in her eyes when she spoke of it. It was not just the wound on her arm that hurt her, but the failure of her mission. "I am sorry," he said softly. Kara tilted her head. "You say sorry too much, human. You had nothing to do with it." Ryan gave a small laugh. "Maybe, but I still mean it." They continued walking through the ruins. Occasionally, Ryan stopped to check a fallen drone or gather supplies. Kara followed silently, watching how carefully he moved. She noticed he always made sure to step lightly, never crushing fallen helmets or debris, as if he respected every lost life on this field, human or alien. After an hour of walking, they reached a broken transport track. Across the other side stood an abandoned shop. Ryan signaled for Kara to wait while he checked the inside. The shop had holes in its walls and shattered windows, but it provided shade. He found a few intact water containers and brought them out. They sat inside for a while, taking a short rest. Kara drank slowly, then said, "Your kind surprises me. I was told humans are violent and selfish." Ryan smiled tiredly. "Some are, but not all. We have good people too. Maybe the same is true for your kind." Kara nodded. "It is true. Many of my people wanted peace, but fear and pride stood in the way." Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. Ryan moved to the window and saw several shadowy figures moving through the smoke. He recognized the design of their armor instantly. Velnar soldiers. Kara stood beside him, her eyes sharp. "It is my patrol. They must be searching for me." Ryan exhaled slowly. "That is good news, right?" Kara looked unsure. "Maybe. If they see you, they will not ask questions. They will attack," he nodded. "Then we need to stay hidden." But it was too late. A scanning drone swept across the street, its red sensor light passing directly over their position. The machine whirred and turned back toward the soldiers. Kara's expression hardened. "They saw us." Ryan grabbed his pack. "Then we run." They sprinted through the back door, ducking under fallen beams as the sound of plasma fire burst behind them. The drone exploded, filling the air with sparks. Ryan followed Kara down a narrow alley, his boots kicking up dust. Her armor clanged lightly as she ran, though she moved fast even with her injury. They reached an open plaza filled with broken statues. Kara stopped and turned to face the direction of the gunfire. Ryan grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? Keep moving. They will not stop until they find us," she said firmly. "I must show them who I am before they shoot you?" Ryan frowned. "Show them? You mean surrender?" Kara shook her head. "No. They must recognize their commander." Before he could reply, the first group of Velnar soldiers appeared from the smoke, aiming their rifles. Ryan instinctively raised his hands, expecting the worst. But Kara stepped forward, her voice loud and commanding. "Stand down." The soldiers froze. One of them lowered his weapon slowly. "Commander Kara?" he asked in disbelief. "We thought you were dead." Kara lifted her chin. I live thanks to this human medic. You will not harm him. The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. One of them muttered, "But he is the enemy." Kara's tone grew sharp. "He is under my protection. Anyone who questions that will answer to me." Ryan stood still, trying to understand what was happening. He had known she was important, but not this important. The soldier's posture and words told him she held high rank. The lead soldier bowed deeply. "As you command, Majesty." Ryan blinked. Majesty. The word echoed in his mind. Majesty meant one thing only. Kara was not just a commander. She was the queen. Kara turned toward him and saw the realization in his eyes. "You did not know," she said quietly. Ryan shook his head slowly. "No, you said you were a guard. I had to. If anyone knew I was the queen, both sides would hunt me. You saved me without knowing who I was." Ryan stared at her, unsure what to say. The soldiers around them knelt, waiting for her command. Kara raised her hand and said, "We return to the base. Bring supplies for the human." One of the guards hesitated. "My queen, our code forbids sheltering an enemy." Kara's voice cut through the air with authority. "Then change the code. This human saved the life of your queen. He is not an enemy today." No one argued after that. Ryan followed them silently as they led the way through the city ruins. His mind was filled with questions, but he stayed quiet. Kara walked ahead, tall and regal even with her damaged armor. Her soldiers kept their distance, watching Ryan with suspicion. When they reached the Velnar base, Ryan was escorted to a tent near the outer perimeter. Kara turned to him before entering her command quarters. "Rest here." "You are safe," she said. Ryan nodded. "You do not owe me this." Kara's eyes softened. "Maybe not, but I give it because I choose to." As she walked away, Ryan sat down on the edge of the cot, still trying to believe what had just happened. The woman he had treated in the ruins was the ruler of an empire his people were fighting. He had expected her gratitude, not loyalty. Outside, the sound of alien engines hummed like distant thunder. Somewhere deep in his heart, Ryan knew his life had changed. What had started as a simple act of kindness had now placed him in the center of something far greater than war. The Velnar base was built deep inside the ruins of the old city, where tall stone walls and broken towers formed natural barriers. Hidden among the shadows, it was hard to spot from the air. Heavy machines moved slowly along the outer trenches, repairing shields and communication arrays. The air smelled of metal and heat from the engines. Soldiers in silver armor worked in silence, their faces focused and alert. Inside one of the command tents, Ryan sat quietly, trying to make sense of the past few hours. He had expected to be captured or executed, not protected. The Velnar soldiers kept a close watch on him, but no one touched him. They brought him food and water, though their eyes carried suspicion. Ryan did not blame them. To them, he was still an enemy soldier. He sat on a small bench, cleaning his medical tools. His hands moved slowly, his mind still turning over what he had learned. The woman he had healed in the ruins, Kara, was not just a commander or a noble. She was the queen of the Velnar Empire, a ruler who led armies and decided the fate of worlds. Yet when he had found her, she had been weak and alone. And she had trusted him. Outside, the sound of marching feet echoed as the soldiers changed shifts. The base was alive again. Drones hovered above the courtyard, scanning the sky for any sign of human aircraft. War might still be raging beyond the city, but here, for now, there was uneasy calm. Ryan heard a soft sound at the tent entrance. When he looked up, Kara stepped inside. Her armor had been repaired, polished to a silver shine. The wound on her arm was completely healed now, though the faint scar remained. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried something new, a mix of gratitude and thoughtfulness. "You look better," Ryan said as he stood. "I feel better," she replied. "Your medicine worked perfectly. My healers were surprised by its power." Ryan smiled faintly. "I am glad it helped." Kara looked around the small tent, noticing how simple it was. "You are comfortable enough here?" He nodded. "I cannot complain. Your soldiers treat me with care even if they do not trust me." Kara gave a small nod. "They follow my command, but trust takes time." She paused, studying him closely. "You are not afraid to be here?" Ryan thought for a moment before answering. "Fear is natural, but I believe you when you say I am safe." "That is enough." Her lips curved slightly. "You are either brave or foolish," Ryan replied. "Maybe a little of both." Kara walked closer and sat opposite him. The light from the energy lamp glowed softly on her armor. For a moment, she seemed less like a queen and more like the same woman he had met in the ruins, calm and thoughtful. "My council has been arguing since I returned," she said finally. "They do not like that I protected a human. Some of them call it a weakness," Ryan frowned. "Then why not send me away?" Kara looked into his eyes. "Because they are wrong. Compassion is not weakness. You showed me that." He felt a small weight lift from his chest at her words. "Then I am glad I could remind you." She leaned back, thoughtful. "You risked your life for me without knowing who I was. If I had told you my name then, would you still have helped?" Ryan met her gaze. "Yes, a wound is a wound. It does not matter whose arm it is on." Kara gave a slow nod, her expression unreadable. "You are a rare kind of man, Ryan. My people fear humans because they see only the ones who destroy. But perhaps there is more to your kind than war." Before he could reply, a Velnar officer entered the tent and saluted sharply. "My queen, the human fleet is approaching the southern ridge. Our scouts report heavy troop movement." Kara stood instantly. "Prepare defenses and alert the artillery division. I will join the command center soon." The officer bowed and left quickly. Kara turned back to Ryan. "It seems the war is not done with us yet." Ryan's voice was steady. "If you need help with medical treatment, I can assist." Kara looked surprised. "You would treat my soldiers?" He nodded. "Yes, they may be Velnar, but they are still living beings. That is what I do." Her expression softened again. "You never stop being a healer, do you?" "Not if I can help it." Kara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. I will have you brought to the medical wing. But know this, Ryan. Some will not accept you easily. Be careful with your words." "I understand." Minutes later, Ryan followed 2 guards to a large dome near the center of the base. Inside were rows of injured Velnar soldiers lying on metallic beds. The smell of antiseptic and plasma oil filled the air. Alien medical staff moved quickly between patients, applying green healing gel and energy stimulants. When Ryan entered, the room grew quiet. The healers looked at him with wide eyes. One of them, a tall man with blue markings on his face, stepped forward. "What is this human doing here?" Ryan's escort spoke firmly. "By the Queen's order, he will assist with treatment." The healer frowned but obeyed. Ryan picked up a scanner and began examining a wounded soldier with a deep chest burn. He worked with calm focus, speaking softly to the patient even though he knew the soldier could not understand all his words. The alien's breathing eased as Ryan applied a sealant patch. The Velnar staff watched carefully, their suspicion slowly fading. By evening, Ryan had treated more than 10 soldiers. Some thanked him quietly, others simply nodded. When Kara visited later, the atmosphere in the room had changed. The healers no longer looked at Ryan with hostility. They saw him as a medic first, not an enemy. Kara smiled slightly at the sight. "You seem to have made an impression." Ryan shrugged. "They needed help. I gave it." She looked around at her people, then back at him. "You have done more for peace today than our diplomats have in months." Ryan laughed lightly. "I think peace begins when people stop seeing each other as monsters." Kara tilted her head. "Wise words for a soldier." "I am not a soldier," Ryan said softly. "I am just someone who refuses to hate." Night came quickly. The base lights dimmed, and the stars shone faintly through the broken sky above the city. Kara and Ryan walked together along the upper wall. From there, they could see distant flashes where the human and Velnar fleet still fought. Kara rested her hands on the railing. "Every light in that sky is a life at risk. I used to watch battles from my palace balcony and feel proud. Now I feel only sadness." Ryan nodded. "War looks different when you see the faces behind the helmets." Kara turned to him. "Do your people ever stop fighting?" "Sometimes," he said. "But we always need someone to remind us why we should." She looked at him for a long time, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the stars. "Perhaps that is your purpose, Ryan, to remind others of what is right." Before he could respond, an explosion shook the ground. Both turned as alarms began to sound through the base. Red lights flashed along the walls. A guard shouted from above, "Incoming missiles from the east!" Kara grabbed her communicator. "All units to defense positions. Shields at maximum." Ryan's instincts took over. "Where is your medical wing?" "They will need cover." Kara nodded and pointed toward the lower corridor. "Go, protect the wounded. I will lead the defense." Ryan ran through the narrow hallways as debris rained from above. He reached the medical dome just as the first missile struck the outer wall. The impact threw him forward, but he quickly pushed himself up and began helping the wounded. He used his human equipment to stabilize the critical ones, sealing wounds and lifting debris. The Velnar healers followed his lead. Outside, Kara stood on the rampart shouting orders. Her armor gleamed under the firelight as she directed her soldiers. Despite the chaos, she fought with calm precision. Every command she gave was sharp and confident. Even as explosions lit the sky, her voice carried strength and control. After hours of fighting, the missiles stopped. The enemy ships retreated beyond the ridge. Smoke filled the sky again, but the base still stood. When Kara returned to the medical dome, her armor was scorched and dusty. She found Ryan still working, his face tired but determined. He had saved dozens of her people that night. She watched him for a moment before speaking. "You fought this battle without a weapon, yet you did more than most who carried them." Ryan looked up. "We both fought our way. Yours with command, mine with care," Kara smiled faintly. "And both were needed." She took a deep breath, looking around at her resting soldiers. "I owe you more than thanks, Ryan. My people owe you." He shook his head. "You owe me nothing. I did what anyone should do." Kara looked at him quietly. "Not anyone. Only someone with a heart strong enough to see past the war." In that silent moment, both understood that something had changed between them. The line between human and Velnar had blurred. Trust had begun to grow in a place built for conflict. As the fires outside slowly faded, the Queen of the Velnar and the human medic stood side by side, no longer enemies, but two souls trying to heal a broken world. The morning light of Thalos Prime seeped through the cracks in the walls of the Velnar base, casting long shadows across the broken streets. Inside the main command dome, the air was thick with the metallic smell of engines and the faint scent of healing gel. Ryan sat quietly on a metal bench looking out at the ruins beyond the walls. Every sound carried meaning. The distant rumble of human ships, the hum of the drones patrolling the city, and the faint shuffle of Velnar soldiers moving supplies. He thought about the events of the previous day. The moment he had stepped into the ruined street to treat the wounded warrior, he had no idea she was anyone special. Now, after the reveal that she was the queen of the Velnar Empire, he realized the magnitude of what had happened. He had healed her wound, and in doing so, had changed the perception of a leader toward humanity. Kara entered the tent without knocking, her silver armor glinting in the morning light. She moved with grace and confidence, though her gait showed the faintest signs of lingering fatigue. The scar on her arm was barely visible, a testament to the strength of the healing patch. Her eyes, the color of polished steel, held a calm intensity. "You have been awake for some time," Kara said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried authority that made the soldiers outside pause even when she spoke softly. Ryan rose and gave a small bow. "I wanted to see the city, to understand where I am." Kara's eyes followed his gaze. This city was once alive. It was a place of trade and culture. Now it is only ruins. He nodded, his thoughts returning to the night spent in the bunker. "I have seen worse. But this place, it is heavy with loss." Kara's lips pressed together. "You understand loss well, Ryan. That is why you are different from the others." He looked at her, surprised by the insight. "Different in what way?" "You saved my life without hesitation. You did not ask who I was, what power I held, or what I could do for you. You acted with the only measure that matters: compassion." She paused, then added, "That is a rare trait in any species." Ryan felt his face warm. "I only did what I would hope someone would do for me." Kara studied him for a long moment, as if measuring the weight of his words. Then she nodded slowly. "You are honest, and that honesty is dangerous in these times, but it is also powerful. You remind me that there is more to life than strategy and war." Before he could reply, a young Velnar officer stepped into the tent. His movements were precise, and his armor reflected the dim light. "My queen, scouts report that human reinforcements are approaching from the south. Their ships are large and heavily armed. They may reach the city within the hour." Kara's eyes narrowed. "Prepare the defenses. Alert all units. Shields at maximum, and focus the artillery on the southern ridge. I will take command from the central tower." The officer bowed and left swiftly. Kara turned back to Ryan. "This is not a battle for soldiers alone. The wounded must be protected. Will you assist?" Ryan nodded. "I will do my best. Tell me where to go." She motioned toward a corridor leading to the medical wing. "Follow me." The wounded are waiting. The medical wing was a large dome with rows of beds and energy lights glowing softly above. Velnar soldiers and healers moved between the patients, applying treatments with precision. The air was filled with the scent of healing gels, antiseptics, and the faint metallic smell of armor. Ryan took a deep breath and began working immediately. He examined the first patient, a young soldier with burns across the chest. He applied a human healing patch and used his scanner to check vitals. The Velnar healers watched closely, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "This is strange," one healer murmured to another. "The patch works almost instantly." Ryan moved from one patient to the next, treating each wound with care. Some soldiers were hesitant, suspicious of the human, but his calm voice and steady hands gradually earned their trust. Even those who had been in pain for hours found relief under his care. Kara walked among them, giving orders to ensure the wounded were safe while Ryan treated them. She noticed how naturally he worked, how his presence brought a sense of calm even to soldiers who had been terrified. She realized that his value was greater than she had first understood. Hours passed as Ryan moved through the wing. He treated burns, cuts, and bruises, using a combination of human techniques and some of the Velnar advanced healing tools. The soldiers began to respect him, and whispers of the human who saved their queen spread quickly. Kara observed silently, proud and thoughtful. "You have done more for my people than I could have imagined," she said softly to him. Ryan looked up. "I am just helping. I do not seek praise," she smiled faintly. "That is why they will follow you without hesitation. Actions speak louder than words. They have seen your heart, and that is enough." Suddenly the ground trembled. Ryan and Kara both looked toward the distant horizon. The human fleet had arrived. Massive ships glided across the sky, their engines glowing like fire. The Velnar soldiers immediately took positions along the walls, shields and weapons ready. Kara's voice was calm but commanding. "Stay here, Ryan. Your place is with the wounded." He hesitated. "I should help outside." "You cannot fight alone," she shook her head. "You are needed here. The lives inside are just as important as those on the battlefield. Trust me." He nodded reluctantly, staying by the beds. Outside, Kara moved among her soldiers, issuing orders with precision. She guided them through defensive maneuvers, directed energy shields to reinforce weak points, and coordinated the placement of artillery. Her presence inspired loyalty and courage in every soldier. Minutes passed, and the first human attack reached the perimeter. Explosions shook the walls, and sparks flew as energy weapons struck. The shields held, absorbing much of the impact, but some damage was inevitable. Kara remained on the rampart, giving instructions and adjusting strategies with quick decisions that saved countless lives. Inside, Ryan continued to treat the wounded. A young soldier with a broken leg cried out in pain, and Ryan quickly applied a stabilizer. Another soldier with minor burns moaned quietly, and he soothed them while applying his healing patch. The Velnar healers watched, learning from his techniques and methods. The attack lasted for hours, but Kara's command was unyielding. She moved with confidence, her presence alone steadying her soldiers. Every decision she made reflected not only strategy, but care for her people. When the final wave of the attack passed, the human fleet had been pushed back and the Velnar base remained largely intact. Kara returned to the medical wing, dust and scorch marks on her armor. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, taking in the sight of her soldiers, many of whom were now stable thanks to Ryan. She approached him quietly. "You did well," she said simply. Ryan shook his head. "I only did what anyone should have done." She smiled faintly, a soft warmth in her eyes. "Most would have fought outside, thinking of glory. You stayed where you were needed. That is rare." He looked at the soldiers resting peacefully. "I could not leave them." Kara studied him carefully. "Your courage and your compassion are unusual. You have earned the trust of my people even if they still question your presence." Ryan felt a quiet pride. He had not come here seeking recognition, but the respect of someone like Kara meant more than any award. The night fell slowly over Thalos Prime. Stars appeared through the gaps in the clouds, distant and bright. Outside the city was quiet, but the scars of battle remained. Inside the medical wing, the wounded slept peacefully under Ryan's watch. Kara stood near the entrance looking out at the horizon. "You have changed something here, Ryan," she said softly. He looked at her. "I did what I could." That is all any of us can do. She turned toward him, her silver eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lamps. No, you have done more than that. You have shown my people that not all humans are enemies. You have reminded me that mercy and compassion can be stronger than any weapon. Ryan nodded. Then maybe we are not as different as we thought. Kara smiled faintly. Perhaps not. For the first time, Ryan felt a sense of belonging, not to a planet or a side in the war, but to a moment of understanding between two worlds. In the midst of ruins and battles, a fragile trust had formed. A human and a queen had begun to see each other as more than enemies. As the night deepened, both of them remained quietly aware of the challenges ahead. The war was far from over, and yet something had shifted. A bond had been formed that neither strategy nor weapons could break. In that moment, Ryan realized that healing a wound had healed more than flesh. It had begun healing hearts and minds. The stars above Thalos Prime shone brightly, as if witnessing the start of something new. The war had finally slowed. Thalos Prime, once a battlefield of fire and smoke, now lay in quiet ruins. The human fleet had withdrawn beyond the horizon, and the Velnar Empire's forces were repairing their defenses and rebuilding what they could. The silence was different from the tense quiet of battle. It was heavy with memory, but it carried the hope of a new beginning. Inside the Velnar base, Ryan moved carefully through the corridors. The medical wing was almost empty now. Most of the wounded had recovered, and those who remained were stable. The human medic had worked tirelessly for weeks, earning the respect of the Velnar healers and soldiers alike. Each step he took echoed in the empty halls, a reminder of how far he had come from the moment he first stepped into the ruins to save a wounded stranger. He paused at the doorway to the command dome. Inside, the light from energy lamps reflected off the polished walls and the silver armor of the Queen. Kara stood near the center of the room, looking over reports with her officers. Her movements were calm and deliberate, a stark contrast to the chaos that had filled this space during the battle. When she noticed Ryan, her expression softened. "You have done well, Ryan," she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority that made everyone in the room pause. Ryan shook his head. "I only did what was needed. You and your people fought bravely. I only helped them heal." Kara walked toward him, her gaze steady. Bravery is more than fighting on the battlefield. Courage is also choosing to protect life even when it is not easy. You have shown that in every action. He felt a warmth in his chest. He had never expected recognition from a queen, let alone one whose life he had saved. "I never sought praise," he said quietly. Kara smiled faintly. "Praise is not the reward. Respect is. You have earned mine and that of my people." She gestured toward the window where the stars were beginning to appear in the night sky. "Look at what we have survived. Lives were lost, and yet here we stand. Your choices mattered in ways you may not even realize." Ryan followed her gaze. The city beyond the base was scarred and broken, but lights flickered in some of the repaired towers. Fires had been put out, and the hum of machinery signaled life returning to a place that had been dominated by death. Kara placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You showed me that humans can be more than warriors. You showed my people that mercy and courage can exist even among enemies. That is why I ask you something now." He looked at her, curious. "What is that?" "I want you to remain here for a time," she said. "Not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as someone who can continue to help. Your presence reminds us of what we can become if we choose understanding over hatred." Ryan felt a mix of honor and hesitation. "I do not belong here. My people are out there. They might need me." Kara shook her head. "Your people need you where you are. But here you are needed in a different way. Healing is a kind of battle too, and your victories have been as important as those won with weapons." He thought about the lives he had saved, the soldiers who now smiled and moved with ease because of his actions. "I will stay," he said finally. "For as long as I am needed." Kara nodded. "Good. You will also have freedom to move among my people, to speak and teach as you see fit. No one will harm you. I guarantee it." That evening they walked together along the outer wall of the base. The city below glimmered with soft lights as repairs continued. Drones hovered and the hum of engines blended with the quiet wind. Ryan felt a sense of peace he had not known in months. Kara spoke quietly. "I have spent my life leading, making decisions that affect thousands, even millions. Often I feel the weight of responsibility crush me, but you reminded me that leadership also includes compassion." He looked at her. Compassion is what makes leadership true. Power alone is not enough, she smiled faintly. Perhaps that is what I was missing in the last battles. I focused on strategy, on strength, on victory, but not on life itself. You reminded me what is worth protecting. The two stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars. The quiet was a comfort after so much noise and destruction. Ryan realized that he had grown fond of this queen, not because of her status, but because of the person she was. Kyra broke the silence. There is one more thing you should know. Ryan turned to her, attentive. I do not just command armies, she said. I am also responsible for decisions that shape the culture and future of my people. Your actions have already changed their view of humans. They will see you as a symbol of hope, a bridge between worlds. He felt the weight of her words. The simple act of healing a wound had become a force for peace, even between species that had fought for generations. Your courage and choices have reminded us that trust can exist, even in war, Kara continued. I will ensure that your people know of your deeds. I will send messages that humans can be allies, not just enemies. That knowledge may save countless lives. Ryan smiled faintly. I only did what I could. That it becomes more is not my doing. Perhaps not, Kara replied, but it matters nonetheless. History will remember it. Over the next few days, Ryan assisted with the rebuilding of the city and care of the wounded. Kara often walked with him, discussing strategy, healing, and the future of Thalos Prime. Their conversations were a mix of ideas, stories, and quiet reflection. Soldiers began to see the bond between the human and their queen as a sign of trust and cooperation. One evening, Kara led him to the balcony of the command dome. The city lay beneath them, glowing softly as repairs continued. Ships passed overhead, heading toward distant worlds, leaving trails of light. You have changed this place, Kara said softly, not with weapons but with your actions. That is the mark of a true hero. Ryan shook his head. I am no hero. I am just someone who refused to turn away. Kyra smiled faintly. Sometimes refusing to turn away is all that is needed to become a hero. They stood together in silence, letting the quiet night settle around them. For the first time, Ryan felt that peace was possible. Two worlds once divided by war had found a moment of understanding through courage and compassion. Kyra turned toward him. When your fleet returns, I will not ask you to stay. You will go back to your people, and they will continue their journey. But know this, Ryan. You will always have a place here among my people. You are not just a human now. You are a bridge between worlds. Ryan felt a deep sense of honor. I will remember this always. As the stars sparkled above Thalos Prime, Ryan realized that the bond they had formed was more powerful than any weapon, stronger than fear, and brighter than any fire of war. He had healed more than a wound on her arm. He had healed trust, hope, and the possibility of peace. Kara placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. You have done what few could. For that, you have my gratitude and the gratitude of my people. Ryan nodded quietly, feeling the weight and meaning of her words. He had come to a planet filled with conflict and uncertainty, but he was leaving a place where hope had begun to grow. The city continued to glow beneath them, signs of life slowly returning. Drones moved calmly above the streets, and soldiers worked to rebuild homes and walls. The first stars of the night shone brightly, reflected in the eyes of two beings who had learned to see each other not as enemies, but as allies and friends. Kara looked toward the horizon. There is much work ahead, but it will be easier with allies you can trust. Ryan smiled faintly. Then we will continue together in our own ways until this world heals. Kara nodded. Yes, and perhaps one day all worlds can learn the same lesson. They stood side by side, watching the night sky. The bond between human and queen had grown from a simple act of healing, stronger than the forces that had tried to divide them. Peace had begun with compassion, and in that quiet moment, it felt like the beginning of something greater than either could imagine. The stars above Thalos Prime shone brightly, reflecting on the repaired streets and the faces of those who had survived. A human and an alien queen stood together, witnesses to the dawn of a new understanding. A wound had been healed, and with it the first step toward lasting peace had been taken.